If you clicked on this video, you're probably like me 6 months ago. Not really knowing how to use Cursor. Maybe you're watching other developers build complete applications in a few minutes while you're still struggling with some basic prompts, and you just keep thinking, what am I doing wrong? It was frustrating for me to have this powerful AI under my fingertips and still not be able to unlock its full power. I just kept seeing threads of people in Twitter building complete applications, and I was still getting nowhere. I would spend hours trying to craft the perfect prompt only to receive a bunch of nonsense code that didn't make any sense and didn't understood the context of my project. But that's when I realized that I was making the same mistake that 99% of the developers that use Cursor make. I was treating Cursor like if it was simply ChatGPT with a code editor. The truth is, most of us think that better prompting is always the answer. But after watching countless of videos on how people actually use Cursor, I realized that it's not about writing the perfect prompt, it's about giving the right context and using the correct features that Cursor gives you. And there is one key feature that rules them all. By using Cursor rules, it's going to feel exactly like if you had a senior developer in your team that knows exactly what type of project you're developing. And once that you implement these rules, you're gonna ask yourself, why didn't you do this sooner? If you're new here, my name is Daniel. I'm a personal trainer and a software engineering student trying to showcase how I use AI to build my projects before I finish university. First rule that I learned the hard way is that Cursor needs a lot of context about what your project is doing. I spent way too many hours getting inconsistent outputs before I cracked this. Not only that, I realized that I was just repeating myself every time that I was starting a new conversation in the chat window because I had to repeat myself about what the project was about, when in reality I could just spend 5 minutes before actually writing all of those prompts, create a Cursor rule about what the project is about, and that's going to drastically improve the output of that LLM. I was constantly getting the right code but for the wrong context, so I couldn't actually implement it into my project. A small but annoying detail is that I use yarn instead of npm, and it will constantly give me npm commands on my terminal while I was on the chat window instead of the yarn one. And that's when I had that light bulb moment. Why don't I create a rule giving it the whole context of my project and also saying all of those small bits of how I'm structuring this application? Now, for creating the project context rule, the number one thing that you need to do is explain briefly what this project is about. On my Cursor rule, what I have is a complete explanation of what the idea of the project is, what am I using for backend, what am I using for authentication, all of those small bits on what technologies I am using is going to make it much easier for the LLM to understand what this project is about. Think about when you're trying to explain your application to someone. This project context is going to be able to give that explanation to every prompt that you input on that LLM, drastically improving the output without having to explain yourself so many times. I also list every big feature that I want to build, but this is more so that the LLM understands what's the future and it's not really something that I keep updating constantly. On LeapVault, I made sure to explain that we were going to implement the camera feature, some video libraries, so on and so on. Now, rule number 2 was when I had a project that grew so much that it got completely out of hand. You see, one of the perks of working with the AI is that if everything goes well, you can keep working with the AI and it's going to give you the output that you exactly need. And this can be a double-edged sword because on one end, you are getting all of the exact outputs for implementing the features that you wanted to build and you're not really having to second guess that code so much. The problem is that the moment that something goes wrong, it can go really wrong. In fact, the more output you have that is incredibly accurate, the more biased you can be into thinking that all of the output that the LLM is giving you is correct and you're not really checking it as much as you should. Whereas if you are constantly getting wrong output from that LLM, you're probably going to be fact checking a bit more in detail whatever the LLM is giving you. This happened to me when I built my manga scraper AI agent. Since I only use it every couple of weeks, since I batch download a whole manga that I want to read and it usually lasts me for a few weeks, I don't usually constantly use this project. So every time that I open it, there's usually a new bug or something wrong with it, but there's small bits that I'm just not keeping up to date with what the libraries are doing. So on that project, I not only define what the project is about, but I also define what's on each folder and how that directory is structured. Because that way the LLM can understand where each function is coming from, what is the purpose of each function, and how the whole project works. It's not only understanding the context, but it's also understanding where are all of those small pieces of the puzzle and how you can tweak them in order to get that output that I need when I give a prompt to it. The cool thing is that now Cursor knows where exactly all of those small pieces of the puzzles are, and if I need to improve a function or change something, I'm not gonna have to explain myself again and again where those pieces are. Cursor is just gonna know it and it's going to go straight to adjusting those parts. It genuinely feels like having a really organized teammate that it always knows exactly what part of the code we need to adjust. If you're liking the video, please subscribe and hit the like button since it would really help me out. And the third rule came to me when I had to embrace that I was just a shitty designer. I tried spending hours on learning how to design mobile applications, how to make them look beautiful, but I really understood the value that it is having a good designer on your team. I just can't afford it. I'm just doing all of these things on my own, so I can't really afford to hire a UI UX designer every time that I have an idea application. Claude does a better job designing these apps than I do. Now, with the power of cursor rules, I can just create a whole layout on how the branding and the UI UX of my application is going to be, and Claude, every time that it's going to change something related to UI or design, is going to follow that same pattern, so I can keep that same standardized design across the whole application. In my experience, if you're just doing this from scratch, it doesn't work so well, but if you already kind of have a layout of how you want the application to look like, it's a great tool. This is exactly what I did with Liftball. I designed all of the icons, all of the screens, all of those things. I did them on my own, trying to copy some more successful applications, and then after that I implemented the UI design. I chose some branding colors, I made sure to create that UI UX design rule, and it went absolutely great. Especially for the onboarding process, it really made a big difference on how I was onboarding the users. You can include things like the exact typography and how you want to handle titles, subtitles, and description. You can include the exact color palette, not just tell the AI that you want something blue. You can specify the code that you want to use for your branding. You can explain what type of communication you want within that application. Do you want something that sounds friendly, or do you want something that sounds minimalistic? Whatever it is that does it for you, Claude is going to replicate it across the whole application. Thanks to this, I managed to not have any inconsistency in between my screens, and it just worked. It's amazing. The main point of this video is for you to understand that Cursor is not just a code editor. It has plenty of features that you need to learn how to use if you really want to use out your coding environment and produce as much code as you can with the highest quality possible. There's plenty of other rules that you can find online, especially from companies telling you how to use their technology. I've been playing around with Supabase and Cloud, and they both have Cursor rules that showcase how to use their products ideally. After I implemented these 3 rules in combination with what I explained in my previous video about the 2 MCPs that I mainly use, it skyrocketed my productivity. Yeah, it takes a few minutes to set up before I actually start coding on a new application, but it's so worth it, because all of the output that the LLM is giving me is going to be so much more accurate that if you have no context about what language I am using, what framework I'm using, if I'm using TypeScript or JavaScript, what libraries I'm using, all of those small bits, the LLM doesn't have to think about it. It just outputs exactly what I needed. You should really take a look at other Cursor features like indexing documentation, using custom profiles to kind of create something similar to Claude projects within the agent window, input your general Cursor instructions, and probably plenty of more that I still don't know about. If you think that I'm missing another Cursor rule that is drastically important, just put it in the comments down below and I'll check it out.